nothing. I'm just giving the facts. Well, at least 5 people said, go get him, mate.
Yeah.
I don't think Winston Peters is a bad guy. I think he's done a lot of good. I think Helen does a good job, or I wouldn't have given $500,000, would I? But it's just somebody calling me a liar, and then saying I'm, you know, confused. He's a shade away from a lie.
Yeah.
And that's from a person I've never met.
Yeah. I mean, is it, I mean, it's disrespectful.
Yeah. At the very least.
Yeah.
Say it outside Parliament.
Yeah. Mr. Green, what are you hoping to get out of this appearance?
Well, the truth. Yeah.
And you're confident you'll get that?
Well, yeah.
Have you got any reason not to be telling the truth?
I won't answer that.
Well, can we...
Mr. Chairman, I'm only asking for common courtesy. And if you guys don't like it, I'll leave. Look, I don't want to be known as the man that shot Liberty Valance. I'm not going to come all this way to do that. I'm just telling the truth. I think they're both good people, Helen and Winston.
Well,
but if he hasn't followed procedure or whatever, I have no idea why he acted that way.
Did you get a fair go? Did you get a fair go, Mr. Glenn?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we asked Winston Peters, we asked Labor Party President Mike Williams, we asked the Prime Minister, all to come on tonight. They either refused or just simply didn't reply. Now, Opposition Leader John Key, of course, is more than happy to offer his thoughts. We're going to talk to him shortly. But first, over to our own political analyst, Therese Arsenault from Canterbury University. This was always going to be painted as, was this going to be the slam dunk? Was it going to be the potency? Did we get that? I mean, you sat there on that select committee day. Did we get that?
Well, I think it was a potent meeting. And let's be very clear. What this was really about was how credible a witness is Owen Glenn, because that's what it's coming down to. And I must admit, before I went into the room, having heard the wild rumors about him, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I have to say, watching his testimony, I thought he was a very credible witness. And what makes it even more credible is he's backed it up. And he's backed it up with an affidavit from a witness that heard him thank, Winston Peters thank Owen Glenn for his help. And also, I think the most compelling evidence that he brought was a phone record of a phone call to Winston Peters' cell phone and then a follow-up email from Winston Peters' lawyer.
I think everyone did consider this was, if there ever was one, the smoking gun in terms of his testimony. Let's have a look at that in full. We're going to roll that now, and this is his testimony from the Privileges Committee in full regarding the phone calls and the emails.
I called Mr. Peters on the 14th December 2005 to inform him that I agreed to contribute. From our office record, this number is Mr. Peters' mobile number. Although Mr. Peters had initially told me he needed to raise $70,000, it became clear to me in the conversation that in fact he needed more than that figure. I offered to contribute $100,000 towards these legal costs. When I inquired where the funds should be sent, Mr. Peters informed me that his lawyer would send the account details. He further requested that any such donation be kept confidential. And immediately after that call, I received an email from Mr. Peters' lawyer, Mr. B.P. Henry, which referred to the conversation with his client and which provided bank account details for remittance.
The conversation with his client is part of, I think, Winston Peters' defence has always been that he never knew about this. There was the Chinese walls and the donation went through his lawyer. Now, he, of course, has to give evidence tomorrow night. That's going to be compelling viewing at 7:30.
And absolutely, we have to wait to hear Winston Peters' side of the story. There's always two sides to every story, and seeing a phone record doesn't necessarily give you an accurate depiction of what was said in the conversation or who was speaking on the other end of the phone. I mean, it was interesting watching Labour MPs on the committee. It seems to their big defense was that, was Owen Glenn certain he was actually talking to Winston Peters himself, even though it was Winston Peters' cell phone number. So I think...
And even those lawyers sent him an email straight away afterwards.
Yeah, the timing is really crucial. There was the phone record, and then immediately afterwards a follow-up email where the client is referred to, and that, the client who just spoke to you on the telephone. Well, that is pretty compelling. I'll be very interested to see what Winston Peters can come up with to counter that.
As you said, you had doubts about, how credible a witness he was going to be before he went in. And in fact, in the House today, they were talking about rumours and things that are being spread about Mr. Glenn, which he also countered today. Is this a sign this whole thing is getting pretty dirty?
Well, you heard him say that he came back partly or largely because he feels quite wounded. Somebody who's given a lot in terms of donations to the Labour Party, and to hear these rumours and a lot of them being spread by Labour themselves. But look, credibility is absolutely the core issue here, and it's because he didn't seem totally credible to the Prime Minister when she first heard the story back in February. That is her defence for not doing something about it sooner. So credibility of Owen Glenn is a crucial issue.
I mean, he made a big call, as you say, to come back here to give evidence, and it was quite interesting how the different parties, if you like, treated him in that committee.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that committee is divided along party lines. We had National supporting him, we had Labour, and of course New Zealand First challenging him. It's a politically divided committee. Well,
there's another issue, of course, that's coming up. We're going to talk about with you, Therese, shortly. But someone else, of course, who was very much interested in the goings-on today in that Privileges Committee is Opposition Leader John Key. He joins us now. Now, you've put out a statement tonight, and predictably, you're attacking the Prime Minister.
Well, what we learned from Owen Glenn today, Mark, was that the Labour Party is front and centre stage in this issue. They're donkey deep in it. It's not just the Prime Minister, and that she knew at least 6 months ago, maybe even earlier, but the Labour Party President was actually the person that Owen Glenn went to give the green light for this donation 2.5 years ago. So no wonder the Prime Minister doesn't want to show leadership on this. She's up to her neck in it.
Well, look, let's just have a look at this, because we do also have the clip from Owen Glenn in that committee hearing today, where he talks about the involvement both of the Prime Minister and the Labour Party President.
I met the Prime Minister privately at her request when she attended the opening of the new business school building, which is named after me at the University of Auckland in February 2008. In a private and personal discussion with Ms Clark, I told her I had made a donation to Mr Peters for his legal costs. I also told her of my conversation with the Labour Party's President, Mr Williams, before I agreed to make that donation back in 2005. It was my understanding Mr Williams would have had to clear this with his colleagues.
Yeah, it was his understanding that Mr Williams would have to clear this with others, by implication, the Prime Minister. That's not necessarily the same sort of proof as was seen with the phone records and the emails, though.
No, but what we know is that he went out for lunch, or brunch as it was, with Mike Williams, the Labour Party President. He returned from that lunch, he rang Winston Peters. A few moments after he spoke to Winston Peters' lawyer, Brian Henry, actually rang and said, look, I know you've had a conversation with my client, this is where you send the money to.
Was that a slam dunk?
Oh, look, it's a slam dunk, all right. But, I mean, what is also clear here is that the Prime Minister's kept New Zealanders in the dark, and we could never work out why she wouldn't make decisions on these issues. Well, now we know they're part of the whole thing.
But this leaves you in a difficult position as well, doesn't it? Because you're saying, OK, it's a slam dunk, that, effectively Winston Peters is hung, drawn and quartered. You've got 4 MPs sitting on that committee, and as he was saying in the House today, how can I get a fair hearing when their party leader has already condemned him?
Well, what you've got to understand is the Privileges Committee here is actually looking at a very narrow terms of reference about whether Winston Peters should have recorded a gift he now acknowledges he's effectively received as part of his pecuniary interest. But, look, there's one thing you've got to say here, Mark. New Zealanders are actually sick of this sideshow. Actually, we've got the Treasury telling us we're in a recession. We've got record number of New Zealanders leaving overseas. We've got people going...
Leak National Party policies?
We've got all sorts. We've got a government that's not governing. And actually, for the better part of the last 6 months, they've had their eye completely off the ball. And I think the Prime Minister will never make a decision on this because she's up to her neck in it. Let's just have an election. Let's actually go out there and talk to the country about the things that really matter, because Helen Clark will never adjudicate on this.